Hi, Tanja here and welcome to TMJ TV, a weekly video series aimed at real estate leaders that would love more time to grow their people and their business. Did you know that leaders spend up to 80% of their time navigating the people, performance and productivity issues within the business? Now this means their focus is off recruiting for results, delivering strategies for success and gaining the market share that they desire. Well, I'd love to help. Every single week I'm going to share insights and free downloadable tools to help you and your people achieve your success in the least amount of time. I hope you enjoy this next episode of TMJ TV. Hi, Tanja here and welcome to TMJ TV, a weekly video series aimed at real estate leaders and teams that want to grow themselves and their business in the least amount of time. And my guest today has had 33 years experience in the industry, started out when he was 19 and a half. He is now leading a team of 107 people across 5 different offices. It is my pleasure to welcome the Managing Director of Inner North Group for Jellis, Craig Shearn, as in learn.
That's exactly right, Tanja. I have to remind people that every day.
I bet. Thank you so much for just hanging out on the couch and having a chat with us and being part of our Key Leaders of Influence series as part of the research we've done with CoreLogic recently. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure.
So I mentioned in the opening, you know, we were talking off air, you were in uni. Yep. And your grandfather was in real estate.
Correct, yeah. My mother's father, yeah.
Yeah. And so why did you decide to get into the industry?
I think, well, having had a bit of a challenge with university and decided how much fun it was and the powers that be deciding that perhaps I should be studying a little harder than partying. So eventually I sort of had to, my father sort of said to me, well, if you're not going to get through university, you better get yourself a job because you're going to have to support yourself. So real estate seemed to be a space that I'd sort of taken an interest in through my grandfather, as I said, and he was an auctioneer, which is going back, you know, very early, probably late 60s, early 70s when I sort of started to see him. And yeah, it was also a natural progression for me in terms of being able to work and study at the same time because I had a lot of friends at university. So it was great, earn some money, study at night, albeit it took me 6 years to get my real estate licence at Swinburne. But
you still got
we got there.
Yeah,
so
persistence pays off.
Absolutely.
So 33 years in the business, and you said before across 4 different brands?
Yeah, 4 different businesses. I started out in property management with Thompson's down in Murrumbina in southeastern Melbourne and progressed into a property management role after 3 years, had a little stint in commercial because I thought playing footy on Saturdays was better when I was in my early 20s.
Of course.
That's a pretty challenging space and I have a great deal of respect for commercial agents. It's a different type of deal making or different type of real estate. And got back into residential back in about 1991 and have been there ever since and working in the inner city for the last 20 years. So it's been a great journey and I've had some great mentors and 13 years with Jellis, Craig and 13 years in my previous business were probably the 2 biggest stints. But
they're long times to be with the brand. Why do you think you stick around for a long time? Well, many people change.
Well, they do, and it's like advertising. It's a lot of different industries, I should say. People do move around, but I think probably in the case of both instances, and particularly now, but even more so when I was with Colin Sims for 13 years prior to Jellis, Craig. It was about the leadership, it was about the people, it was about the brand, it was about the story, and they engaged with us very well. They brought, in my previous business, pre-Jellis Craig, as I said, Colin Sims, they brought younger people through, gave you opportunity, but it was up to you to take the opportunity, of course, like anything, and not everyone wanted it. But I think that taught me a lot about, having some good mentors in that business, about then having the responsibility of being running my own business up in Northcote back in the early 2000s when they opened up there, and then that sort of led into my ability to make my own office with Jellis Craig back in 2004. Right. When I approached them at the time, they didn't have any business in the inner city, so it was a good opportunity. Yeah.
So what you're saying there, Craig, is you yourself, so even though now you're a managing director and leading 107 people, you as a leader value great leadership and great mentoring. So what, in your opinion, defines a great leader?
Look, it's many things, and it's easy to coin phrases if you like. But I think it's obviously about getting people to come with you. It's about collaborating with your team. It's about engaging with your team. If you've got a particular direction you want to go in, it's not about telling them the direction you want to go in. It's about being strategic with your group of directors, working out the path you want to take, and then engaging the team. I mean, you would have seen that obviously recently where we took our whole entire company after only 12 months out to the Yarra Valley for a full day with sales, PM and admin.
Yeah, it's great.
And that was about really sort of engaging them in what we'd achieved over the 12 months and getting them excited about what we want to do for the next 12 months. So I think sharing information is terribly important as a leader, and I think extremely authentic conversation is obviously very important.
Yes.
If you don't follow through on what you say you're going to do, obviously they're going to start to doubt you. And I think it's very important when you've got a big group like we do that we're very clear as leaders about how we're going to convey that to the staff if we want to take a particular direction and getting some buy-in from them.
Yeah,
which is pretty logical, obviously, but
but it's quite amazing, and our research is showing this, how many teams aren't clear of what the vision is or the strategic direction. And look, many times it's a beautiful, imperfectly perfect, consistent work in progress, but at least if you've got constant communication to bring people up to speed, that consistency breeds trust.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and I think the challenge for us, having been a merged business, which I think we obviously haven't touched on yet, but on the 1st of July last year we merged 3 businesses, of which I had one. And that became the 6 directors and the 3 partners as we currently exist. And we had different processes, different systems. There were 2 brands that came together, so there was some different cultural alignment in both businesses, and it was about having some patience on both sides about the way you do things. And it's not perfect, and it's still not perfect, but we're sort of getting there. But I think we've had really good breakthroughs in the last 6 months as a director group around getting to know one another, getting to trust one another, and clearly that's so important in any business. From a leadership point of view, very difficult to lead if you're not getting along, and it's very important you don't have any sort of, I guess, disagreements or some sort of heated conversations in front of the staff either, because you want that focus when you go to them and try to sell them into whatever idea is you're trying to achieve and so forth.
So that's a pretty big amalgamation, and you've now got 6 directors, so 6 individuals that are co-responsible for directing the business.
Absolutely.
And I get, it will still have teething, pains and training wheels, because it's like 12 months in and it's all very new. And despite the best intentions though, Craig, what have been some of the challenges? Because I think this message would be of service to many people that not only are going through a merger, but also getting new leaders with different opinions in the business. What have been the challenges, having 6 different opinions, and how have you effectively navigated that? Well,
I think even though we're only young, we've reviewed things very, very frequently. So at the end of 3 months, we had a 90-day review with the directors and partners. The 4 principal sales directors, Greg, Rob and Sam and myself, had all probably had a sales director type background, albeit I probably had a bit more background in terms of starting offices, running offices and so forth, and sort of getting off the tools a bit, for want of a better expression. But what became very apparent after 90 days is that one of us had to go off the tools for a bit, and it was going to have to run the group. So I was beautifully set up by one of my partners, Greg Cusack, who decided that was a good thing for me to do, because I seemed to be good at that, and which was very complimentary. But
tell us, what were the skills that were identified for you to lead that process?
Look, I've always been a good person from a people engagement point of view. I've never been scared of hard conversations, or certainly not in the last 10 or so years. Maybe in my earlier years I was a little bit of trepidation, but I think that ability, I guess, to interact with anyone across the business, to look at the business as a whole and then put line management in place and have different conversations and so forth. And look, to be honest, I don't think I was ever the greatest. I never aspired to be the number 1 salesperson. I was a good salesperson. I could list. I've done probably 2,000 auctions and so forth. But I think it was the building of the business and the creation of the business and the growing the business which always sort of floated my boat. And I think very early on the boys identified that. Notwithstanding, they've got some terrific skill sets too, and I think it's very important that we all have roles which we're sort of ever evolving as we're growing older. But it became very apparent that we had a 6-month review. We obviously had a 12-month review. So I think all of those reviews have sort of got us to where we are now, albeit it's given us a much clearer path of what we're trying to achieve. And I think it's very easy to get absorbed in the business, and we still do that. But you've got to take a breath at certain points, and you've really got to have your list of your to-do list, and keep referring back to it when your business is in its infancy, and to see that you're really starting to hit the the big rocks, and it's very easy to start a lot of things and finish nothing. And we've very quickly identified that we've got 8 or 10 things we're trying to achieve, and really that's probably my responsibility to see that those things are achieved.
So I can hear a really good balance of making sure the in the business and the on the business is happening in parallel, with no wheels falling off on either end.
Correct.
And, tightening the nuts and bolts along the way and adjusting the coordinates to help you get there. So you're right, I was at your 12-month celebration, and the energy in the room was awesome. And I'm keen to hear, and so there were sales teams and then property management team.
And the admin.
And the admin, yes, they were there for the morning. I think they went back. How have you, because, change elicits fear and concern in people, because many of us love certainty. How have the team embraced the change, and what have you done to minimise any, casualties along the way?
Well, I think there's been quite a lot of counselling at various times during the week with certain people.
Yeah.
Look, everyone's different. Some people are very accepting of change, others aren't. Ironically, there were, in the brand that when we came together and weren't Jellis Craig, there were people there that were just so excited about joining this brand that they had this perception of being that $1 million plus in the inner city, and really being able to elevate, I guess, their clients' property in the marketplace. And we can talk about brand in a moment. But then there were others that were very fearful that we had too much accountability, or there was too much process involved. I mean, Jellis Craig is highly protective of its brand through corporate, and I've been involved since the business franchise back in 2011. But obviously that's a very good thing. But it's a matter of people understanding that over the course of time why you do things, and why there's such accountability and consistency around brand management.
And why does that matter? Because it's an important one.
Yeah. Well.
And let's go there. Why does brand message and consistency matter from your perspective?
Well, it's what you're about. I mean, if you can't maintain it and you can't uphold it, or you can't have your team uphold it, well, then obviously things start to go off the rails. And I think there's plenty of evidence around Melbourne and Sydney and Australia in the last probably couple of years where we've seen some fairly significant brands start to get off track. Now, whether that's arguably because of the structure of their franchisor, or I'm not here to debate the merits of other brands, but when we set about franchising the business back in January 11, because we, the time I joined back in 04, we were 4 offices. We're soon to be, I think, 23 on the 1st of October, which is fantastic. But I suppose my point there is that if you're going to continue to get the results that you're getting, you've obviously got to be consistent with your message. Now, whether that's leveraging technology, whether that's protecting your brand, whether that's evolving your brand, and as I touched on before, in terms of when we set up our franchise, back in 2011, we were very cognizant that we were going to be great brand protectors, and I think through the journey, that is something we've always just tried as hard as we can to maintain in the people that we've obviously employed, and that we've got the biggest probably corporate marketing department at franchisor level of any business, and I think that alone has also obviously helped us to have that brand consistency throughout. But it was also, I think, identifying, we rebranded a couple of times in the last few years, but back when we rebranded, I think it was in 2014 with the current brand that we have, which seems to have resonated particularly well in the inner north, in terms of being on, not so much on trend, but just I think it's a brand that people warm to. There was 15 of us that went through a whole process with a brand management company from various sectors of the business, male, female, directors, salespeople, property managers. And what we identified throughout that transition was that our core client was females between the age of 35 and 40.
Right.
Hence the carbon and the Tiffany in our brand, which not a lot of people know, and but it obviously resonated with that, I suppose, demographic of client, if you like, which were a lot of the people that were trading up, have had kids trading up into the second house and so forth. Now that's obviously pigeonholing a sector of our market, but I think a lot of people probably haven't gone through that process to identify it. So that's one of the core values when we're looking at rolling out new product, or we're looking at rolling out new strategies around, certainly around the marketing and the brand space, that we go back to the core values that we established.
And carbon and Tiffany being your colours.
Yeah.
This is like
which I think our chairman Richard Jellis referred to as, but we don't sort of promote that in terms of
Sure.
like anything specific.
But you know, it's interesting because when you do have a clear understanding of who your customer is, you can reverse engineer a full sensory experience, and from a brand perspective, colour, feel, tonality, personality, approachability, essentially must be as close a fit for your core client as possible.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's where the carbon Tiffany, I like that carbon Tiffany. Now I will not look at the brand the same. So, okay, so you've obviously invested a lot, and you've said you've got the biggest corporate team regarding, you know, marketing.
From a marketing perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, leadership from a franchisor point of view is terribly important as a franchisee, and I've worn both hats, having obviously been involved at corporate since its infancy, and I went off the board there at Christmas to focus on this new venture that we've got because it was taking plenty of my time.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, a lot of businesses have franchised or evolved in a franchisee capacity, where a franchise capacity, I should say, where the key stakeholders who are running the franchisor possibly haven't been the right fit, and they've possibly been people with real estate backgrounds. Not to say that that's completely bad, but like, you know, Nick Dowling, who was an relationship banker at Macquarie, was someone we developed a relationship with. Now, he was a no-brainer for us to head up the CEO of our business when we established. And, you know, we've really been very careful about growing that team, as has obviously under Nick's guidance, and he's done a terrific job over his, you know, starting I think at 7 offices when he started, and sort of helping us unfold 23 offices.
Pretty cool.
But I think it's all about, you know, skill set and having the right sort of skill set, and, you know, we're good real estate agents, and, you know, the best leaders aren't always the best salespeople, the best agents, as we know, and history's shown us that, and, you know, people have been promoted along the way in certain roles where they really just didn't have that people piece of that skill set. They were too self-oriented, and they couldn't see the bigger picture, which is terribly important, particularly when you've got a bigger business like ours.
Yeah, and the research that we've done with CoreLogic is showing that around 82% of industry leaders think they're actually pretty good leaders, yet their people are giving very different feedback. About 16% of the results demonstrate that people feel that there's really poor leadership. And you're right, it is a very different skill set. So what is Jellis Craig doing about elevating the current skill set of their leaders?
Well, in terms of plugging ourselves, obviously from a coaching and training point of view with the various people, I think the great thing about Jellis Craig now, in terms of the size of its group, I think we've got about 37 directors. We've got, you know, I wouldn't be able to, there'd be hundreds of years of real estate experience in there. So the great thing about the collaboration of the leaders within the other businesses, because obviously we've got a bigger group in Burundara and a bigger group in Stonington, and obviously the Brighton Bentley Bayside group, soon to be the Banyule group, our inner North group. You know, if I ever need to roll something out, or I've got a particular issue with maybe a staff member or a department, I've now got 5 or 6 people who are heading up other businesses I can go to. So I think
soundboarded and.
So I think the group's been very good at getting everyone to leverage off each other from a leadership point of view. And, you know, why reinvent the wheel when there's someone already doing it?
Yes.
You know, whether that's around a recruitment strategy, whether that's around a marketing strategy, whether that's around the particular running of a particular department, you know.
So I can hear 2 strategies there. You enlist the services of external parties, whether they be coaches or trainers, to elevate the current state of leadership. And you also do what I call asset mapping. So you're cultivating the existing wisdom, process, procedure within the business and replicating and duplicating that across the brand if it's working. So that's 2 really great solid strategies, which are internal and external. And
I think it's also up to the individual. I mean, I've done over the years, I've done a business management course, I've done an Australian Institute of Company Directors course. So there's obviously a certain amount of self-education that I would encourage anyone who wants to go into a leadership role to do, which I think gets forgotten. I mean, we do a lot of learning on the job in real estate. I have had some fantastic mentors, but I've still had some direction around some education, which, you know, not everyone's into, and I get that, but I think it's terribly important for your growth as a leader that you, not just keeping up with trends, but obviously continue to self-educate. So, you know, of course, attending seminars, attending courses, all the normal things.
Sure.
But, you know, picking and choosing probably too, what the right ones are for you as you get more experienced.
And you do weekly training with your sales team?
We do weekly training in the sales department on the Thursdays. Obviously, we're looking at ramping up some coaching shortly
Yeah.
across the board in terms of sales, property management and admin.
Yeah.
And then some more specific training relating to sales agents, the 300 to 500 GCI agents, working with them to get them up and getting them to leverage off their database as best they can. So yeah, there's quite a lot going on in the training space, which is good. And we're sort of, I think after 12 months, getting a better feel for what the training needs are, but that'll be an evolving thing as well.
Sure. And you talked earlier about, you know, the big change that you've been through and how, you know, it was a very consultative process and you've kept people informed and you've been really transparent, and after 12 months you can see the buds of the fruit really starting to ripen. I asked you before we started, you know, what you felt was the top issue, certainly from a survey perspective, that if you had one direction as a leader within the industry to focus on,
Yep.
you said staying positive in times of change is a key one. Obviously, you've just been through massive change.
Yep.
So, but that staying positive in times of change doesn't always happen at a big thing with a merger. It can just happen on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely.
So what, and I know we've had a conversation previously, Craig, about Jellis Craig's philosophy around supporting your people that work with your brand to have a positive state of mind.
Yep.
This industry is renowned for high levels of stress, high levels of anxiety, substance abuse. So what are you doing as far as health and well-being and keeping people's mindset in a counterintuitive environment?
Yep. Well, there's an old saying, you don't try real estate tries you, right? So, I mean, I think I open that, you know, any interview I have if someone wants to know about real estate. But I suppose it's a lot of things. I mean, we're just in the process of rolling out a employment assistance program. Now, obviously, you know, issues of mental health, issues of relationship counselling, a whole range of things. So we've got a service offering that we're going to offer out to all of our staff and their family along all of those. It could involve financial planning, could involve some basic low-level legal advice. So I think you've got a duty of care today to look at any sort of employee assistance program like that. Obviously, we've got the Jellis Craig Foundation, which we get our team members very engaged in. You know, that's been going for 3 or 4 years now, an initiative of corporate. Notwithstanding, we do a lot of community stuff, which is very important in our own inner north background. And I think, you know, getting the staff involved and seeing the company involved in making a difference. You know, we support Headspace, which is a great organisation.
Which specialises in mental health issues.
Mental health in teenage kids and getting them back in. Certainly, we're helping them also at the moment, mentoring them around getting back into the employment sector and giving them some mentoring around, you know, going for interviews and so forth.
Great.
We had a long history with BCNA, and probably our bigger initiative now is probably with Very Special Kids, obviously, which is another great organisation, which you know, Andrew Mill and Andrew McCann, the Stonington directors, were involved in. I guess it's all about having different initiatives. You know, we do a lot of things, whether they be staff golf days. I mean, a lot of the normal things that people would do, but I think it's important to do them regularly.
Yes.
You know, we took the whole property management team out bowling. We had dinner. We made sure that all the directors were there. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's also obviously just taking some time out to say, okay, well, you know, real estate's a serious business, but it's okay to have a bit of a laugh and some fun as well.
And not take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, and I think we all do. You know, we all get. Look, it's such a modern, fast-paced world. You know, I often say, you know, I'd love not to have a mobile phone, and we used to do without it. I think in the 33 years, you know, I've seen the fax, the mobile phone, the internet, the web. So I'm really aging myself there, aren't I? But you know,
you're getting ready for your backpack to just you know, travel.
And my 25-plus-year-old adult children all get very frustrated with me because, you know, I'm always wanting to fix something technology-wise on my iPhone, which they think I should know how to do in settings. But, you know, but so, you know, I think it's a range of things. It's keeping, you know, so whether it's pastoral care, whether it's training, you know, we're looking at potentially some new partnership offerings in the short term. We're looking at some life coaching and some financial advice coaching around that. So I think you've got to look at all of those things now. It's just not, you know, this person's going to fit this job. It's like, well, they're going to fit this job, and then I can take them on this journey, and these are the things that I can assist them with along the way, depending on how much they want to plug or not plug into that.
And you're right. I agree with you, Craig. I think leaders do have a duty of care and brands do have a duty of care. And one of the themes that we're seeing globally around leadership, it's the old Richard Branson philosophy, is if you treat your people like your clients, then they will treat your clients as gold. So, and it's not just, you know, fresh apples or fresh coffee in the tea room. It is appreciating they spend the majority of their life, many of them at work, away from their families, certainly if they're full-time or in real estate. So providing those extra services, whether it's financial advice or life coaching or mental health support that I'm assuming is confidential, but it's just, look, here are the resources. And that provides great leadership because at least you can say to your people that it's there for you.
Absolutely.
If you don't have it, that's the issue. And then you can be considered negligent because you're not providing a platform for people to be able to evolve and grow.
Yep.
Briefly, biggest leadership challenge for you guys right now that you're working on?
Probably organisational structure to a certain degree. And what I mean by that is having merged the entities, obviously you immediately see where you might be over-resourced or under-resourced.
Got it.
But it takes some time with brand alignment in terms of bringing brands together. So you get that people buying into the brand that you've got, buying into the process that you've got, then looking and saying, okay, well, what do all the roles entail? We've seen rapid growth in our business from the point of view of probably 25% in the first 2 months of this financial year versus last year.
Well done.
Now that's terrific, and that says on the one hand we're on the right path. We could be a little bit blessed by the market as well. I suspect it's a lot to do with our brand and it resonating in the inner north on a larger scale now, because I think we play in that really $1 to $3 million space.
Sure.
And going back to who is our most important client, there's a lot of younger families who are upscaling in the inner city now, and a lot of gentrification of all of those suburbs. We've even got all the baby boomers selling houses with 3 and 5, 6, 7 million wanting to come back. So that's obviously put a pressure on things. But I think it's obviously, whilst it's very exciting to see that growth, it's very important that we continue to work out why it's happening and obviously plan and ensure that it continues.
Biggest leadership reward or thing that you're most proud of right now as a brand around leadership?
Look, to be honest, the fact that our director group engage with our staff. And I know that sounds really basic, but what I mean by that is there's not a director or a partner in our business, albeit I probably spend more time with some of them than others, that the staff either don't know or the staff wouldn't feel uncomfortable going and having either an open or a closed conversation with. So I think we've got great engagement with our team members. I'm not saying it's perfect by any means. We're still working in certain areas, but I think we've been able to connect and have very authentic conversations as a director group. And I think that's terribly important, because I think you appoint someone as head of property management, or you appoint a sales manager, or you appoint someone who's head of an admin department, and you sort of think that if you're not hearing from them that everything's okay, you've got to keep going in there and saying, is everything okay?
Yeah, how are you going?
Yeah, 100%.
So you also mentioned before there's about 8 to 9 key things that you're focusing on. What are the top 3 focuses for the Jellis Craig brand, and what difference do you see that making?
Well, I think from a brand perspective, it's probably the continuing innovation and leveraging technology. We're very heavy in the social media space, particularly in the inner north, and that's probably an overarching thing.
And what are you doing? So what are you doing to leverage?
Well, I mean, corporate's just developed a very, very key social media product which leverages our clients' properties, whether through Facebook and other social media mediums, as opposed just to buying core, I suppose, REA domain type products. We've developed our own product, if you like, which I think is very important. Which obviously we're having such a great marketing and social media people, I should say, at corporate level. We've been able to do that. In terms of the inner north business, I think there's a couple of pieces that we're working on. One is certainly looking at the sales writers between 300 and 500 and really saying, okay, how can we get them to the next level? What training do they need? What mentoring do they need? What coaching do they need?
Yeah.
We've just about finalised a really high-end recruitment piece. Now, what I mean by that is if we're trying to leverage someone either into our business from another business or from another industry and so forth, this is a very significant document that we've put together with myself and corporate's help around who we are, what our mission statement is, what their journey is going to look like. We can do that for sales, admin, PM. So it could be commission structures. It could be.
So you can customise it.
Absolutely. Okay. And I think rather than just sending them a letter and say, look, it was great to catch up. Here's our offer. It's really sort of saying, well, what is it like to work at Jellis Craig? Who is Jellis Craig?
Right.
What can I expect in my journey with Jellis Craig?
Well, there's a great saying, Craig, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yep.
And, you know, the CoreLogic data from the perceptions from buyers and vendors from the transaction with a real estate agent drops by 47% from
Yep.
the moment the vendor signs the authority to the sale is made. I'm hearing out in the field that new recruits are having a very similar experience from the interview process to the induction process to joining the brand. So
Yep.
that's great that you've got a really compelling piece of communication. And
we'll continue to evolve it too, depending. I mean,
course.
there's obviously things you can add to it, there's appendices you can add to it and so forth, depending
Yeah.
on what the circumstances is.
but it sets the tone for who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're trying to attract great operators from other areas, one of the things I'm seeing a lot is you need to have a compelling why. Why would I uproot from where I am and come over here to kind of start again? There's got to be a compelling why.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you're telling the story beautifully.
Yeah.
So on a final note, as a leader in an industry that is, facing disruption, and we hear that all the time, and where the results are showing that 16% of leaders aren't really doing a great job, what one thing do you think leaders in the real estate industry really need to keep simple and focus on to bridge that gap?
Just regular communication with your team members.
Yeah.
So I said that piece before about thinking everything's okay. I think I'm not just talking about one-on-ones. I think it's really taking the time out of your day or your week. Might be someone you haven't spoken to for a week. Might be someone you pass every morning. You go in and you wander over and you say, "How's it going?" I mean,
And
it's very,
mean it.
very, and mean it, absolutely. It's very basic because I think we get so absorbed in the running of the business.
Yeah.
We get so focused on bottom line or top line or whatever it may be that, the reality is you're only as good as the people around you.
True.
So if the people around you, and my partner's always got a saying, you never know what's going underneath the covers or in their mind. So,
Yeah.
it's very important that you're having those real conversations with them. And I don't think it's rocket science. I don't think I can give any sort of great pearl that is topical at the moment other than to say, look after your people.
I am 100% with you. And in the chat I had in I think part one of my chat with Tom Panos, we were talking about just ask your people, how's life?
Yeah.
Like really.
Yeah, no,
Not
genuinely.
just, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? And you pass ships in the night. It's like, sit down. Craig, how's life?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, as I always say, you don't always have to be best friends at work. I mean, obviously, there's got to be a situation where people obviously get along and work together, and some people are friendly or social through colleagues at work. But you've got to be able to sit down with anyone as a leader and have a really genuine heart-to-heart, one-on-one, look in the eye sort of conversation and say, look, you don't... I mean, I've had it's people management,
Sure.
I mean, I've had so many situations this year, I think probably 5 or 6, where I've actually noticed that someone was out of sorts. And I think that to have that intuition as a leader comes with time and your ability to read people. But, they won't always tell you. But I've had 4 or 5 of them say, oh, actually, yeah, I'm not okay. Now, that might be a very low-level situation or it might be a real high-level situation. But at least then you can offer them some advice or some guidance
Sure.
or, get them some help.
But as a leader, don't be too busy working either in the business or on the business to not eyeball your people and ask them how you are, and trust your own intuition or emotional intelligence to check in.
Yeah, and I think and that builds great trust. And so when you look to make a change, which maybe not everyone agrees with, if you've got that level of engagement, then they're probably going to follow you, and they're going to trust you, albeit, we don't all agree with all decisions in any business, but that gets back to obviously the relationship you have with them, and we're still building relationships, and as I said, we're certainly not perfect, but I think we've got a really good focus on what's going to work for us, and clearly it's working with the people that we've got, and then obviously telling the story and having success, and then obviously that's obviously going to attract people too, which is hence the recruitment document and so forth.
And the ripple effect. And Maya Angelou, the late great Maya Angelou, had a quote that said, people will forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
And it feels to me like that is one of your personal and the Jellis Craig philosophies of keeping having your people internally and then externally just feel great about engaging with you and the brand. So really appreciate you taking the time
thank you so much.
to share some of your pearls
Hope that
of
made
wisdom.
some sense. I think I lost my way somewhere there.
No, you're all good. Made absolute sense. And you know, again, congratulations on your recent merger, and I do know that you guys are planning some really great stuff to do to really elevate your people's ability to achieve success, which at the end of the day will also just increase your service levels and the client experience, which has a great snowball effect. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tanja.
Craig Shearn.
Thank you very much.
I hope you found that useful. If so, please like it and share it. And if you'd like access to the free downloadable tool, just click on the available link. If you also have any questions or challenges, specifically in the area of leadership or mindset, just write it in the comments below, and where possible, I'll provide solutions to your requests. Remember, let love lead, and you can turn your workforce into the life source of your business. I'll see you next week for more TMJ TV.